Welcome to Sinister Truths, where we explore the darkest, most disturbing stories ever recorded, accounts buried by time, silenced by fear, and often erased from official history. Tonight, you're joining us on a journey into one of those unsettling narratives, a story drawn from real documents and whispered records that still haunt the past. Before we begin, take a moment to tell us in the comments where you're watching from and the exact time you're listening to this narration. Whether it's late at night, early morning, or somewhere in between, we're fascinated by knowing which corners of the world and what hours of the day or night these grim truths are being heard. Settle in, lower the lights, and prepare yourself, because once a truth is uncovered on Sinister Truths, it can never be unseen. In the year 1838, New Orleans was a city of contrasts, a place where wealth and opulence coexisted uneasily with the harsh reality of slavery. The streets bustled with merchants, traders, and travelers from distant lands, each carrying with them the promise of opportunity, profit, or escape. Alongside the grandeur of Creole mansions and the lively markets filled with exotic spices and goods, there existed an undercurrent of pain and oppression, woven deeply into the fabric of everyday life. Slavery was the law of the land, an institution entrenched in the economy, the culture, and the psyche of the city. It was an era when the idea of freedom for a black person was not only dangerous, but almost unthinkable. And yet, within this rigid and brutal system, human hearts could not always be contained. In the midst of this complex and often cruel society, a story unfolded that would challenge the very boundaries of law, morality, and social expectation. A story of forbidden affection, of courage, and of a love that defied the rigid strictures of an unforgiving world. The master in this tale was a man of means and social standing, a figure respected in his community, known for his intelligence, his business acumen, and his influence among the circles of power. He lived in one of the grandest districts of New Orleans, in a house that overlooked the Mississippi River, its windows reflecting the sunlight and the bustling life of the port below. To outsiders, he was the embodiment of propriety and control, a man who adhered strictly to the rules of society, who understood and respected the boundaries that governed his world. And yet, beneath this polished exterior, there existed a complexity, a vulnerability that few could perceive, a depth of feeling that would eventually lead him down a path fraught with peril. She, the woman who would become the center of his secret devotion, was a slave, bound not only by law, but by circumstance. She had been born into servitude, her family torn apart by the whims of owners, her life defined by obedience and labor. Despite the hardships, she possessed a remarkable presence, a combination of intelligence, grace, and quiet strength that could not be ignored. Her eyes spoke of resilience and curiosity. Her movements carried a dignity that defied the oppression surrounding her, and it was precisely this blend of qualities that drew the master's attention in the first place. Their initial encounters were unremarkable on the surface, brief exchanges in hallways, moments of shared tasks, fleeting glances across rooms. But beneath the surface, a bond began to form, subtle and dangerous, in a society that dictated the rigid separation of the races, where a relationship between master and slave was both socially forbidden and legally fraught. Even the smallest interaction carried with it the weight of risk. Gossip in New Orleans was swift, and reputation was fragile. A whispered rumor could ruin a family, destroy a career, or bring about legal consequences. And yet, the heart is rarely governed by logic or fear. It was in this tension between desire and danger that their connection began to flourish, hidden in plain sight, a secret shared between two souls who understood the peril of what they felt. The master found himself drawn not merely to her beauty, but to her mind, to the subtlety of her observations, to the way she navigated a world designed to suppress her spirit. He admired her strength, her wit, and the quiet dignity with which she carried the burdens imposed upon her. It was an admiration that soon blossomed into something deeper, something that could not be contained by social convention or law. For her part, the woman was acutely aware of the chasm that separated them, of the impossibility of a future together. And yet she could not help but notice the differences in how he treated her compared to others. There was a respect in his attention, a gentleness in his actions that set him apart from the many who saw her as nothing more than property. It was this rare humanity, coupled with a growing mutual understanding, that began to plant the seeds of a connection that would soon become dangerous in its intensity. As their relationship developed, the master found himself confronting uncomfortable truths about his own life and the society he was a part of. He was forced to question the morality of slavery, the justice of a system that allowed one human to own another, and the limits of his own courage. The contrast between his social standing and the vulnerability of the woman he cared for became increasingly stark. Each day brought new challenges, maintaining appearances before neighbors, avoiding suspicion from friends and family, and keeping the truth buried beneath layers of social expectation. The very act of caring, of showing kindness, was revolutionary in a world that demanded indifference and obedience. The danger was never abstract. In New Orleans of 1838, the legal consequences for a master engaging in a relationship with his slave were severe, though often inconsistently applied. Public opinion was equally harsh. The community adhered to a strict code of racial and social hierarchy, and any deviation could provoke scandal, ridicule, or worse. The stakes were high, yet the intensity of their emotions made each day feel like a tightrope walk, a precarious balance between secrecy and the longing for freedom, affection, and acknowledgement. In addition to the external threats, there was the internal struggle. Both were acutely aware that any misstep could have catastrophic consequences. The master wrestled with guilt and fear, questioning the propriety of his feelings while simultaneously recognizing their inevitability. The woman navigated a complex web of hope and caution, knowing that to reciprocate could endanger not only herself, but also her family and her fragile sense of security. In these moments of quiet introspection, the contours of a forbidden bond became more defined. They began to communicate in subtle ways, a glance that lingered too long, a shared understanding during labor, moments of conversation carefully crafted to avoid suspicion. Each interaction was charged with meaning, each word and gesture a careful negotiation between desire and prudence. The society around them remained oblivious, focused on commerce, politics, and social display, but the private world they inhabited was electric with possibility and fear. The city of New Orleans itself seemed to mirror their secret struggle. Its streets were alive with vibrancy and danger, its markets a melange of colors, smells, and sounds. Creole culture mingled with African traditions, European influences, and American pragmatism, creating a landscape both beautiful and treacherous. It was a city accustomed to paradox, a place where life and death, freedom and bondage, joy and suffering existed side by side. In this context, their relationship was both improbable and inevitable, a microcosm of the city's contradictions. Stories of clandestine affairs and secret alliances were not uncommon, yet none carried the same weight of moral, legal, and social danger as theirs. The tension between personal desire and societal expectation created a narrative that could not remain hidden forever, a story destined to test the boundaries of law, courage, and the human heart. Within this unfolding drama, one can glimpse the universality of human emotion, the yearning for connection, the courage to defy convention, and the resilience required to navigate a world structured to suppress such impulses. It is a reminder that even in the darkest periods of history, individuals found ways to assert their humanity, to recognize beauty and intelligence, and to cultivate love in a landscape that sought to deny it. As the days and months passed, the master's feelings deepened, evolving from admiration to protectiveness, and eventually to a profound love that could not be contained. He began to contemplate actions that would defy not only social expectation, but also the very law itself. Freeing a slave was no small act. It required navigating legal bureaucracy, financial arrangements, and social scrutiny. Yet the intensity of his feelings made inaction impossible. Similarly, the woman felt the growing weight of emotion, a mixture of fear, hope, and longing. Each day brought new evidence of his regard, each gesture a subtle promise of something greater. In these small, private moments, they discovered the contours of a relationship that had no precedent in their immediate world, a connection that challenged norms and demanded courage, patience, and discretion. Their story, while rooted in the specifics of New Orleans society in 1838, resonates with timeless themes: love against the odds, a struggle for autonomy and recognition, and the courage required to defy oppressive structures. It serves as a testament to the complexity of human relationships, the moral key, Steins embedded in social systems, and the ways in which personal integrity and affection can confront entrenched injustice. In examining this forbidden bond, one must consider the broader societal implications. The act of loving across the boundaries imposed by slavery was not merely a personal risk, it was a challenge to the entire social order. It questioned assumptions about race, property, and hierarchy. It illuminated the contradictions inherent in a society that prided itself on civility and culture while simultaneously denying basic human dignity to a significant portion of its population. The very existence of such a relationship forced observers, whether consciously or not, to reckon with uncomfortable truths. And while the master and the woman navigated their precarious position with care and discretion, their story carried a silent revolutionary power, a quiet defiance against a system designed to suppress emotion, freedom, and equality. Even as the city thrived around them, they moved through the streets with an awareness of eyes that might watch too closely, of rumors that could ignite scandal, and of the legal structures that could render all their efforts meaningless. Every action was measured, every word carefully chosen, every interaction fraught with the potential for discovery. And yet, in spite of, or perhaps because of, the constant danger, their bond grew stronger, deepening into a love that was as remarkable for its courage as it was for its intensity. This was a love that demanded not just emotional commitment, but moral and social bravery, a love that would eventually compel the master to consider acts that could redefine both their lives. The story of their forbidden bond in New Orleans of 1838 is not merely a tale of romance, it is a narrative that encapsulates the tensions of an era, the contradictions of human society, and the extraordinary lengths to which people will go in pursuit of connection and justice. It highlights the fragility of freedom, the complexities of social hierarchy, and the capacity of the human heart to resist oppression. In telling their story, one is reminded that history is not only shaped by laws and politics, but also by the quiet, courageous acts of individuals who dare to love, hope, and defy expectation. The stage was set, the players in position, and the drama of forbidden affection was unfolding against a backdrop of a city that was at once magnificent and merciless. In this crucible of danger and desire, the master and the woman would begin a journey that would challenge the conventions of their time, test the limits of courage and loyalty, and ultimately create a story that would endure far beyond the confines of New Orleans, far beyond the year 1838, and far beyond the boundaries imposed by a society that sought to dictate who could love, who could be free, and who could claim the dignity inherent in being human. Their bond, at once fragile and unbreakable, would set the course for Troy. CES that defied expectation, risked reputation, and challenged the very foundations of a society built on inequality. And in understanding the magnitude of what they faced, one gains a deeper appreciation not only for the story itself, but for the enduring power of human connection, the resilience of the spirit, and the profound courage required to pursue love when all the world conspires against it. In the heart of New Orleans, in the year 1838, the lives of two individuals from diametrically opposed worlds intersected in a way that would forever change the course of their existence. On one side was the master, a man of wealth, education, and social standing, born into a family whose influence stretched through the city's economic and political circles. From a young age, he had been groomed for prominence, educated in elite schools where the values of propriety, discipline, and authority were instilled alongside lessons in literature, mathematics, and the law. His upbringing had been privileged yet strict, affection had been measured, and discipline was constant, creating a persona of control and precision that he carried into adulthood. He was a man who knew the mechanisms of society, who understood the importance of reputation and the power of influence. His estate was one of the largest in the district, a sprawling mansion with tall columns, wide verandas, and intricately carved doors, its walls adorned with artwork that reflected both wealth and taste. The house was staffed with numerous slaves, each assigned tasks ranging from cooking and cleaning to tending the gardens and managing supplies. The operation of the household demanded order, and the master prided himself on maintaining a disciplined and efficient environment. Yet beneath this exterior of control lay a man who, despite his upbringing, possessed a sensitivity and perceptiveness that set him apart from his peers. He had the capacity for reflection, for empathy, and for understanding the subtleties of human emotion in a society that often rewarded brutality and indifference. His awareness of the humanity in those around him, particularly in the slaves who served his household, distinguished him, though it was a dangerous perspective in a world structured by hierarchy and subjugation. On the other side was the woman who would become the focus of his forbidden affection, a young slave born into a life defined by rules and restrictions not of her own making. Her early years had been marked by labor and resilience. Her family had known the constant threat of separation, the ever-present shadow of owners' whims, and the harsh realities of a society that treated her as property rather than as a person. Despite these challenges, she exhibited a remarkable combination of intelligence, poise, and strength, qualities that allowed her to navigate the precarious balance between obedience and self-preservation. From a young age, she had learned to read the intentions of those around her, to discern kindness from cruelty, and to measure her words carefully to avoid punishment while asserting her dignity in subtle ways. Her beauty was undeniable. Though understated, it was reflected not only in her appearance, but in her grace, her gestures, and the quiet confidence that accompanied her every movement. This combination of intellect, poise, and resilience made her stand out among her peers, and it was impossible for the master not to notice her as she went about her duties in the household. Their first interactions were seemingly mundane, the sort that occurred daily in the operation of a large estate. She would carry out tasks with precision and efficiency, ensuring that meals were prepared, rooms were cleaned, and errands were completed without error. He would observe these actions, noting her diligence and attention to detail, while she, in turn, was aware of his scrutiny, careful to perform her duties flawlessly, yet curious about the man who commanded the household with authority and, at times, unexpected attentiveness. Over time, their encounters grew more nuanced. A conversation here, a shared glance there, moments of mutual acknowledgement that transcended the rigid roles assigned by society. Though words were scarce and carefully chosen, there was an unspoken recognition of intelligence and presence on both sides. The master found himself intrigued not only by her efficiency, but by her subtle insights, her quiet humor, and the way she navigated her constrained world with dignity. He began to notice the small details that others overlooked, the way she adjusted a curtain to let in sunlight, the gentle precision in arranging the table, the thoughtful way she responded to instructions. In these moments, he glimpsed a mind that matched his own in acuity, and it awakened feelings that were both exhilarating and alarming. For the woman, awareness of the master's attention brought a mixture of curiosity and caution. She understood the dangers inherent in being noticed too closely, the risks of misinterpreted gestures or words in a society where a slave's fate could be irrevocably altered by a momentary indiscretion. Yet there was something different in the way he observed her, a sense of respect that contrasted with the harsh scrutiny of others. It was a delicate balance, a tightrope of emotions that required constant vigilance. As weeks turned into months, their relationship evolved through these small, measured interactions. They began to recognize in one another qualities that transcended the rigid societal labels of master and slave. The master admired her intelligence and resilience. She noted his fairness and the thoughtful way he approached both business and personal matters. The boundaries imposed by law and custom were always present, a shadow over every encounter, yet within that shadow a bond quietly formed. Their connection was not immediate in its intensity, but gradual, a slow awakening that crept into their consciousness wit. Every shared look, every carefully managed conversation, and every recognition of mutual respect, the societal barriers that separated them were formidable. In New Orleans, the laws governing slavery were strict, designed to maintain the hierarchy and prevent any subversion of the established order. Slaves were denied education, legal standing, and the basic freedoms afforded to white citizens. Relationships between masters and slaves were strictly regulated, with clear consequences for impropriety. Social norms reinforced these laws, ensuring that any deviation was met with ostracism, gossip, or punitive action. To love across this divide was not merely risky, it was considered scandalous, immoral, and illegal. Despite these obstacles, the master and the woman discovered ways to communicate subtly and safely, using shared labor as an opportunity to exchange words and expressions that carried meaning beyond their apparent simplicity. A brief glance, a slight nod, a quietly shared joke, all became vehicles for connection, markers of recognition, and expressions of the growing bond between them. Their mutual awareness of danger heightened the intensity of their feelings. Every interaction was laced with risk, yet this very risk gave weight to their connection. It was in the forbidden nature of their relationship that they found both tension and exhilaration, a sense that they were participating in something extraordinary, something that defied the limitations imposed upon them by society. As their understanding of one another deepened, they began to share more than fleeting moments of attention. He learned about her past, the hardships she had endured, the family she had lost, and the ways she had cultivated resilience in the face of oppression. She, in turn, gained insight into his character, his values, and the inner conflicts that accompanied his privileged position. Their conversations, though constrained by propriety and the constant need for discretion, revealed a meeting of minds and spirits, a recognition of each other's humanity in a world designed to deny it. The master also began to question the world around him in ways he never had before. Observing her intelligence, grace, and moral fortitude, he confronted uncomfortable truths about the institution of slavery, the assumptions of superiority upon which it was built, and the complicity of those who benefited from it. The woman's presence and perspective challenged his worldview, forcing him to consider the ethical implications of his actions, his role in perpetuating injustice, and the possibility of creating a life that honored both love and morality. For the woman, the relationship was a source of both hope and trepidation. While she recognized the uniqueness of the connection, she was acutely aware of the precariousness of her situation. Trust was a luxury she could scarcely afford, yet she found herself drawn to the master's attentiveness and apparent respect. Every gesture of kindness, every word of recognition was weighed carefully, and every interaction carried with it the tension between possibility and danger. Together they navigated this delicate balance, learning to read the unspoken language of caution, intention, and feeling. The growth of their bond was marked by small, almost imperceptible milestones, a conversation that lasted longer than necessary, a shared moment of laughter, a gentle touch that lingered just beyond the boundary of propriety. Each of these moments carried significance, reinforcing the emotional connection that was blossoming against the backdrop of oppression and risk. Their understanding of one another extended beyond emotion into mutual respect for intellect and character. He admired her strategic thinking, her resourcefulness, and her ability to anticipate challenges, while she noted his fairness, patience, and the way he sought to reconcile his feelings with the societal constraints he faced. In these qualities, they found common ground, a foundation upon which trust and affection could begin to grow despite the dangers inherent in their positions. Over time, the presence of the forbidden bond became impossible to ignore, even as it remained carefully hidden from the wider world. The master began to contemplate the possibility of a life together that transcended the constraints of slavery, while the woman weighed the risks and consequences of allowing herself to hope for such an extraordinary future. The social, legal, and personal stakes were immense, and yet the intensity of their connection made inaction increasingly intolerable. Their story, while deeply personal, also reflected broader themes of resistance, courage, and the assertion of humanity in the face of systemic oppression. In recognizing one another's dignity, intelligence, and capacity for feeling, they challenged the assumptions of a society built on inequality. Their connection, though private, was a quiet act of rebellion, a refusal to accept the limitations imposed by law and custom, and a declaration of the enduring power of human emotion. As they continued to interact, the complexities of their relationship deepened. Each day brought new opportunities to understand, support, and care for one another, but also new reminders of the fragility of their position. The master's increasing admiration and affection were tempered by the awareness of social scrutiny, the woman's cautious optimism tempered by the reality of her vulnerability. Together, they navigated these challenges with subtlety, patience, and mutual recognition of the stakes involved. In this evolving dynamic, one can discern the early stages of a profound emotional partnership grounded in respect, intelligence, and courage. The initial interactions, though modest, laid the groundwork for a relationship that would eventually confront the very foundations of law and custom in New Orleans. Their bond exemplified the extraordinary lengths to which human connect can flourish, even under the most restrictive and dangerous circumstances, and it serves as a testament to the enduring capacity for empathy, admiration, and love in the face of systemic adversity. By understanding their backgrounds, the societal forces that shaped them, and the careful cultivation of trust and respect that defined their early interactions, one can appreciate the extraordinary nature of their story. It is a narrative that illustrates not only the possibilities of connection across impossible divides, but also the courage, intelligence, and emotional depth required to pursue such a connection in a world structured against it. The master and the woman, each from worlds apart yet drawn together by circumstance, intellect, and heart, embodied a tension that was both perilous and transformative. Their journey, beginning with careful observation, mutual respect, and cautious engagement, set the stage for acts of courage and defiance that would eventually test the limits of law, morality, and societal expectation. In examining the contours of their early relationship, one gains insight into the interplay of power, vulnerability, and affection, and the ways in which human beings navigate the constraints imposed upon them while striving for connection, recognition, and dignity. It is within this framework that the narrative of the master and the slave unfolds, revealing a story that is as much about social challenge as it is about personal courage. A tale that underscores the profound human need for recognition, empathy, and love, even in the most oppressive circumstances. Their bond, carefully nurtured through observation, respect, and subtle communication, foreshadowed the extraordinary decisions that lay ahead, choices that would defy convention, risk reputation, and confront the legal and social strictures of their time. It is a story of beginnings, of the slow unfolding of recognition and affection across an impossible divide, a story that illuminates both the beauty and the danger inherent in human connection, and the courage required to cultivate it against the tides of oppression and expectation. In the sultry heat of New Orleans, amidst the clamor of markets, the echoing tolls of church bells, and the ever-present hum of river traffic, a secret began to blossom in the shadows of a grand estate. The master and the woman, bound by circumstances that should have kept them apart, found themselves drawn together in ways that defied the rules of society, law, and morality. Their relationship, already rooted in quiet admiration and mutual respect, had evolved into something far more profound, a delicate and dangerous dance that required careful planning, keen awareness, and absolute discretion. Each encounter was fraught with risk, for in a city where gossip could travel faster than the Mississippi currents and where the eyes of neighbors, friends, and employees were ever watchful, a single misstep could unravel everything. The mass terror, a man accustomed to control, now faced a dilemma unlike any he had previously encountered. His life had been structured around order, propriety, and reputation, yet the emotions stirring within him threatened to upend the very foundations upon which he had built his identity. He found himself increasingly captivated by the woman's intelligence, her quiet strength, and the subtle ways she navigated a world designed to suppress her. He admired her resilience, her ability to maintain dignity under conditions that would break many, and the keen understanding she demonstrated of the dangers surrounding them. Every time he observed her, whether managing the household with precision or moving through the servants' quarters with a grace that defied expectation, his admiration deepened into something more, an affection that was both exhilarating and terrifying in its intensity. For the woman, the awakening of mutual sentiment was both a comfort and a peril. She had long learned the necessity of caution, of measuring each action, each glance, each word, to maintain her safety and autonomy. Yet the master's attention carried with it a recognition of her intellect and humanity, a subtle acknowledgement that she was more than property, that she was a person capable of thought, feeling, and decision. In the hush of these private realizations, a bond formed, delicate yet potent, like the first tendrils of a vine seeking sunlight. Their secret affair, if it could even be called that, unfolded in quiet, measured ways. The house itself became both a stage and a shield, its many rooms, corridors, and hidden corners providing opportunities for fleeting conversations, subtle gestures, and shared moments that might otherwise have been impossible in the open. Each interaction required careful timing and precise awareness of the surroundings. A smile, a word of encouragement, a glance lingering a heartbeat too long, all were acts of courage and signals of a growing intimacy, small rebellions against the strict social hierarchy that sought to contain them. The intensity of the secrecy heightened the emotional stakes. Every encounter carried with it the thrill of discovery and the terror of exposure. The master's heart would race when he saw her in a quiet moment, alone with a task, and he would deliberate over the safest way to communicate his regard without drawing attention. The woman, equally aware, measured her responses, balancing the human desire for acknowledgement with the necessity of prudence. Their interactions became an intricate game of understanding and restraint, a silent language born out of the awareness that any deviation from subtlety could have devastating consequences. Beyond the confines of the estate, the city itself seemed to mirror their clandestine connection. New Orleans was a place of contradictions, a city of grand public displays and private secrets, of opulence built atop exploitation, and of cultural vibrancy shadowed by systemic cruelty. Its streets were alive with color, music, and commerce, yet beneath the surface lurked suspicion, scrutiny, and judgment. Within this environment, their secret affair unfolded as both a personal rebellion and a profound statement of human connection. Every moment they shared was imbued with significance precisely because it was forbidden. Their exchanges were never casual. Each conversation, each look, each gesture was intentional, weighted with meaning, and fraught with danger. They developed a rhythm, a cadence of interaction that allowed them to communicate without words, in some cases relying on shared glances, subtle motions, and an acute awareness of timing. The depth of attention required to maintain secrecy created a bond that was at once intensely personal and profoundly resilient. Trust became the cornerstone of their relationship. The woman had to believe in the master's discretion and in the sincerity of his feelings, while he had to trust that she would navigate their interactions with the care and intelligence necessary to avoid discovery. In a society structured to render her invisible and powerless, these mutual acknowledgments of agency and understanding were revolutionary. Each act of recognition, each signal of affection, was a quiet defiance, an assertion of the humanity that the laws and norms of the day sought to deny. As time passed, the master found himself increasingly preoccupied with thoughts of her, his mind drawn to recollections of her demeanor, her words, her expressions. He began to contemplate the possibility of a life together, though the enormity of the obstacles weighed heavily upon him. Legal, social, and familial pressures all loomed large. To consider a future in which she was not a slave but a partner, equal in choice and recognition, required a courage that went beyond mere affection. It demanded a willingness to challenge the very structures that had defined his upbringing, to risk reputation, social standing, and the acceptance of his peers. For her part, the woman navigated a landscape of hope and caution. She was acutely aware of the precariousness of her situation, the consequences that could arise from a misjudged word or gesture. Yet she could not ignore the profound human connection that had developed between them, a connection that spoke to the possibility of autonomy, respect, and mutual recognition in a world designed to deny her both. This awareness intensified the emotional complexity of their secret affair. Each moment together was colored by the knowledge of danger, yet it was precisely this danger that heightened the significance of their bond. The thrill of secrecy, the tension of careful negotiation, and the exhilaration of shared recognition created a relationship that was both fragile and resilient, delicate yet unbreakable. In order to preserve their secrecy, they developed methods of subtle communication. Simple routines became signals, the way a tray was placed on a table or a CU. Artane, adjusted to catch sunlight, could carry meaning known only to them. A glance across a crowded room, a gesture seemingly incidental, could convey affirmation, reassurance, or the unspoken promise of continued attention. These practices required ingenuity, attentiveness, and an extraordinary sensitivity to human behavior, skills that both possessed in abundance. Yet secrecy also imposed its own burdens. The constant vigilance required to avoid suspicion created tension, fatigue, and anxiety. Both were aware that the slightest slip could result in severe consequences. Gossip among household staff, scrutiny from neighbors, or the casual observation of a passerby could unravel months of careful attention. The emotional weight of these risks was ever present, a reminder that their connection existed in a space both thrilling and dangerous. Despite these pressures, the emotional rewards of their clandestine bond were profound. They discovered in each other an understanding that transcended social hierarchies, a recognition of intellect and spirit that was rarely afforded to a slave and rarely reciprocated by one in authority. In the privacy of shared tasks, quiet moments, and carefully orchestrated encounters, they were able to express themselves with a freedom that contrasted sharply with the constraints of their respective roles. The secrecy of their affair also fostered a deep empathy. Each learned to understand the other's fears, desires, and vulnerabilities with a precision born of necessity. The master became attuned to the woman's moods, her subtle signals, and the ways she managed the dangers of her environment. She, in turn, became aware of his hesitations, his moral reflections, and the moments when his affections struggled against the weight of societal expectation. Together they navigated these complexities, their emotional intelligence and sensitivity deepening the bond between them. The evolution of their secret affair was gradual, marked by incremental progress and careful observation. Moments of physical proximity were rare and fleeting, limited by the demands of propriety, the vigilance of observers, and the constant awareness of social boundaries. Yet the emotional intimacy that developed during this period was remarkable, providing a foundation upon which more daring and consequential decisions could later be made. They also began to imagine possibilities beyond the confines of their present reality. Conversations, coded gestures, and private reflections allowed them to envision a life in which the constraints of slavery and hierarchy were lifted, a life in which affection and choice could exist openly rather than in secret. These imaginings, though fraught with peril, became essential to sustaining their commitment and hope. Their clandestine relationship also had a subtle impact on the broader household. Though interactions were carefully managed, there were moments when the attentiveness and respect afforded to the woman by Teach master drew quiet observation from other slaves and even from visiting acquaintances. These dynamics required additional caution, as even inadvertent awareness by others could spark curiosity or suspicion. The couple's awareness of these possibilities sharpened their vigilance and reinforced the importance of discretion in every act, glance, and word. Beyond the immediate confines of the estate, the social climate of New Orleans added layers of complexity to their situation. The city was one in which appearances mattered profoundly, where social norms reinforced legal structures and where deviation could carry severe consequences. The master had to navigate not only the legal ramifications of his attention, but also the perceptions of neighbors, colleagues, and family members, any of whom might misinterpret his actions. The woman, for her part, was subject to the scrutiny of other slaves, overseers, and the ever-present threat of punitive action should her actions be misjudged. Within this environment, the art of subtlety became a survival skill, a means of sustaining their bond while minimizing exposure to risk. The secret affair, though hidden, also allowed for moments of profound human connection. They shared thoughts, concerns, and reflections that could never be voiced openly. In these exchanges, they revealed vulnerabilities, fears, and dreams, cultivating a level of intimacy rarely afforded to either party. The relationship became a source of emotional sustenance, a refuge from the harsh realities of life in New Orleans, and a testament to the resilience of human affection in a world structured by inequality. The continued maintenance of secrecy required ingenuity and courage. Every interaction, every movement, every expression was carefully considered. They developed a silent language, understood only by the two of them, allowing communication across distances and situations without drawing attention. The stakes were ever present, and the awareness of potential exposure intensified the emotional depth of their interactions, creating a bond that was as thrilling as it was perilous. Ultimately, the secret affair of the master and the woman represents a remarkable example of human resilience, courage, and the capacity for connection under extreme constraints. Their ability to cultivate affection, understanding, and trust in a society designed to prevent it speaks to the enduring power of love and the extraordinary lengths to which individuals will go to assert their humanity. Even within the strict confines of 1838 New Orleans, amidst the dangers of discovery and social condemnation, they found a way to maintain their bond, navigating fear, risk, and societal expectation with intelligence, empathy, and subtlety. In these acts of quiet rebellion, they laid the groundwork for choices that would eventually challenge the very foundations of law, custom, and social hierarchy, demonstrating that even in the most constrained circumstances, the 8U Man heart seeks connection, understanding, and recognition. Their secret affair was more than a romantic entanglement. It was a delicate and courageous assertion of agency, a statement that human connection can persist even when society seeks to suppress it, and a testament to the enduring power of love in the face of oppression. It was within this intricate dance of secrecy, respect, and mutual understanding that the seeds of future defiance were planted, seeds that would one day grow into actions of profound consequence, challenging the established order and creating a story of courage, love, and the unyielding pursuit of freedom. In the grand yet restrictive society of New Orleans in 1838, a turning point arrived in the life of a man who had long walked the fine line between social propriety and personal desire. The master, a figure of influence, wealth, and respect within the city's elite circles, found himself confronting a dilemma that threatened not only his reputation, but also the very structure of his understanding of morality, law, and love. For months, the clandestine relationship he maintained with the woman he had once regarded merely as a member of his household, staff, had deepened into a bond that defied all societal conventions. He had observed her intelligence, resilience, and grace, qualities that seemed to illuminate every interaction they shared. The admiration he once felt for her practical skill and quiet dignity had transformed into profound affection and an undeniable sense of moral responsibility. Yet, as the depth of his feelings grew, so too did his awareness of the danger inherent in their position. He was a man constrained by the expectations of family, society, and law, a man whose every public action was scrutinized and judged. To act on his desire was to invite scandal, legal challenge, and the disapproval of peers whose judgment could have consequences, ranging from personal ostracism to financial and social ruin. Nevertheless, the master could no longer ignore the truth that had been gradually asserting itself, that the woman he cared for was not merely an object of secret fascination or passing sentiment, but a fully realized human being, deserving of freedom, respect, and agency. The decision to emancipate her was not one made lightly. It was a choice that required a careful weighing of personal conscience, social consequence, and legal precedent. Freeing a slave in New Orleans was no small feat. It required navigating bureaucratic channels, ensuring legal documentation was properly filed, and contending with the skepticism, hostility, or outright opposition of family members and influential acquaintances. The process was fraught with difficulty, demanding both determination and a willingness to confront entrenched attitudes that had persisted for generations. The first challenge lay in understanding the legal framework. Slavery in Louisiana was governed by a combination of state statutes, city ordinances, and low NG standing custom, all of which placed significant restrictions on the manumission of slaves. The master had to research the laws meticulously, consulting legal advisors, drafting petitions, and preparing for potential scrutiny from public officials. Every step was critical. Any oversight could result in the invalidation of the act, the return of the woman to servitude, or even punitive measures against the master himself. Alongside the legal hurdles were the societal pressures. The family to which the master belonged had long maintained its reputation through adherence to social norms, carefully cultivated alliances, and strict observance of propriety. To emancipate a slave, particularly one with whom he shared a personal connection, would not merely be unconventional, it could be considered scandalous. The reactions of peers, friends, and neighbors were unpredictable, and the master knew that any misstep could damage his standing in ways that might reverberate for years. Yet, despite these considerations, the moral imperative weighed more heavily than the potential consequences. The master recognized that to allow the woman to remain in bondage, subject to the control and whims of another, would be a profound betrayal of conscience and affection. The ethical dimensions of the decision were as pressing as the legal and social ones. He understood that true love could not exist alongside coercion, that genuine respect and care required recognition of autonomy and freedom. To act otherwise would be to undermine the very foundation of the bond they shared. The decision was accompanied by intense introspection. The master spent long hours in contemplation, weighing the risks and benefits, imagining the reactions of those around him, and considering the potential ramifications for both their lives. He reflected on the societal structures that enforced inequality, questioning the morality of a system that allowed wealth and power to dictate human destiny while denying basic rights to so many. In this period of reflection, he also considered his own identity and values, recognizing that courage was required not only in action but in confronting one's own conscience. The woman, meanwhile, experienced a parallel, if equally complex, emotional journey. She sensed the shift in his attention, the deliberation behind his gaze, and the weight of thought in his words. While she could not know the specifics of his internal struggle, she perceived that a profound decision loomed on the horizon, one that could alter the trajectory of her life. Her own response was tempered by hope, fear, and the cautious optimism born of years of navigating precarious circumstances. Every interaction between them during this time was imbued with additional significance. Small gestures, shared glances, subtle nods, carefully chosen words took on a new weight, hinting at possibilities previously unimaginable. The tension of secrecy, combined with the anticipation of potential freedom, created a charged atmosphere in which both were acutely aware of the stakes involved. The practicalities of manumission demanded careful planning. The master began by consulting legal documents, researching precedents, and identifying potential obstacles. He prepared affidavits, engaged witnesses, and ensured that every step was meticulously documented. The bureaucracy was cumbersome, requiring patience, persistence, and an unwavering commitment to the outcome. Each completed form, each signed document, represented not just a procedural step, but a tangible assertion of his intention to defy societal expectations in pursuit of justice and love. Financial considerations were equally important. Emancipation often required compensation, either to other family members, to the state, or to parties with claims on the individual being freed. The master carefully assessed the resources necessary to secure her freedom, calculating the costs while ensuring that the act would be legally binding and irrevocable. These calculations were not merely practical, they were moral. He recognized that the integrity of the process was essential to protect both her rights and the stability of the union he envisioned. The social ramifications weighed heavily on him as well. Friends, relatives, and neighbors were likely to react with surprise, disapproval, or even hostility. The decision to emancipate a slave was a direct challenge to the norms of the elite circles in which he moved. He had to prepare for gossip, judgment, and possibly estrangement, understanding that the act of freeing her would mark him as unconventional, daring, and perhaps even morally contentious in the eyes of society. Emotional courage became as essential as legal knowledge or financial preparation. The master was aware that the act of freeing her carried not only tangible consequences, but symbolic ones as well. It was a statement of defiance against a system that normalized oppression, a declaration that personal conscience and love could transcend societal expectation, and an acknowledgement of the inherent dignity and autonomy of another human being. The ethical dimensions of the decision were inseparable from the practical ones. To act with integrity required addressing both simultaneously. In the midst of these preparations, the couple navigated their evolving relationship with heightened awareness. Their interactions reflected both the anticipation of what was to come and the persistent dangers that remained. Each word spoken, each gesture shared, became a rehearsal for the future they hoped to secure. They discussed possibilities in coded language, explored emotions without revealing details, and cultivated an understanding of mutual reliance that strengthened their bond while maintaining discretion. The anticipation of freedom brought with it both excitement and anxiety. The master considered the moment when she would no longer be bound by the legal status of slavery, imagining how their interactions might change, how society would react, and what adjustments would be necessary to protect their lives and their dignity. The woman, equally invested in these reflections, envisioned the possibilities of autonomy, choice, and recognition, tempered by the knowledge of the uncertainties that awaited them once the legal and social constraints were removed. Their secret affair evolved during this time into a partnership in strategy and hope. They began to plan within the bounds of what was safe for the eventual day when freedom would be formalized. This planning required patience, discretion, and mutual understanding as they balanced the urgency of desire with the necessity of caution. Each small step toward emancipation was both practical and symbolic, reinforcing the seriousness of the master's intentions and the reality of their shared aspirations. Emotional stakes heightened as the day of legal action approached. Both recognized that the act of manumission, while a triumph over law and custom, was also a test of courage, trust, and mutual commitment. The master's resolve was continually assessed against the pressures of societal expectation, while the woman's trust and faith in him were constantly affirmed through his careful planning, attention to detail, and unwavering dedication to her well-being. Legal documentation was painstakingly prepared. Witnesses were carefully selected and every potential point of challenge anticipated. The master understood that any misstep could result in the invalidation of the act, the loss of trust, or even personal consequences for both of them. This meticulous attention to detail reflected not only his intelligence, but also the depth of his commitment. As the final steps of preparation were taken, the master and the woman shared moments of quiet reflection, acknowledging the gravity of the choice and the implications for their future. The emotional intensity of these moments was heightened by the secrecy that had defined their relationship from the beginning. Every glance, every gesture, every word carried profound significance, a testament to the bond that had been nurtured in the shadow of fear, risk, and societal disapproval. The decision to emancipate her was ultimately an act of courage, moral clarity, and profound personal commitment. It represented a challenge to societal norms, a defiance of legal and social constraints, and a recognition of her humanity, agency, and right to autonomy. It was a declaration of love that transcended the ordinary, a deliberate choice to align personal conscience with action, despite the dangers, uncertainties, and potential consequences. In taking this step, the master not only transformed her life, but also altered his own, embracing responsibility, moral courage, and the complexities of challenging entrenched systems of power. The legal proceedings moved forward, deliberate and methodical. Petitions were filed, witnesses affirmed the legitimacy of the actio, and documentation was verified to ensure the permanence of the emancipation. Throughout this process, both the master and the woman were acutely aware of the stakes, the fragility of the endeavor, and the profound significance of each step. Emotional and practical preparation intertwined, reinforcing the depth of their commitment and the extraordinary nature of their undertaking. The culmination of this decision marked a turning point not only in their personal narrative, but also in the social and moral landscape they navigated. By freeing her, the master had enacted an extraordinary challenge to the assumptions of his time, asserting that love, justice, and recognition of human dignity could take precedence over law, custom, and convention. Their relationship, once constrained by secrecy and fear, now entered a new phase, one filled with possibility, hope, and the enduring test of societal response. In understanding this decision, it becomes clear that it was more than a legal act. It was an expression of values, an acknowledgement of humanity, and a deliberate choice to confront and transcend the limitations imposed by society. It was a decision forged in patience, courage, and careful planning, reflecting both the intensity of their bond and the moral clarity required to act in a world structured to inhibit such actions. The decision to emancipate her set in motion a series of events that would redefine their lives, challenge societal norms, and serve as a testament to the enduring capacity of love, conscience, and courage to overcome even the most formidable obstacles. It was a turning point, a moment in which personal conviction triumphed over fear, and the promise of freedom, dignity, and recognition became a tangible reality. In making this choice, the master and the woman not only reshaped their own destinies, but also crafted a narrative that would endure as a remarkable example of human resilience, moral courage, and the power of love to transcend law, custom, and societal expectation. In the aftermath of emancipation, New Orleans in 1838 became both a stage of possibility and a theater of peril for two individuals whose bond had already defied societal conventions. The master and the woman, now legally unbound by the chains of slavery, faced a challenge that was perhaps even greater than the act of freeing her, the prospect of marriage in a world that regarded such a union as both scandalous and morally subversive. The city around them, vibrant with commerce, culture, and tradition, remained a place where the codes of social propriety were enforced with a rigor equal to the law itself. Gossip traveled as quickly as news, and the reputation of families, individuals, and entire social circles could be upended by even the faintest hint of impropriety. Yet the bond that had grown through careful observation, clandestine interactions, and shared risk had reached a point where it could no longer be confined to secrecy or deferred by fear. The decision to marry was not taken lightly. It was a deliberate act of courage, requiring both careful planning and moral resolve. The master, accustomed to managing the complexities of law, business, and social expectation, recognized that a union with a woman who had once been enslaved would provoke scrutiny, skepticism, and even hostility. It would challenge the established hierarchy, confront social norms, and demand that friends, family, and acquaintances confront the humanity and equality of a person whom society had previously regarded as property. The woman, equally aware of the stakes, approached the decision with a mixture of hope, apprehension, and prudence. She understood that the marriage, while a culmination of personal desire and emotional commitment, was also a public act that could bring danger in its wake. Every interaction, every arrangement, every decision related to the ceremony required careful consideration, as the consequences of miscalculation could be severe. Their engagement in the practicalities of marriage began with the legal formalities. While emancipation had granted her freedom, marriage was governed by separate statutes that often discriminated against newly freed individuals, particularly in matters involving unions with white citizens. The master sought legal counsel, drafted petitions, and prepared to navigate the intricate bureaucracy necessary to ensure that the marriage would be recognized and protected. Witnesses were selected with discretion, and documents were meticulously prepared to avoid any ambiguity that could be exploited by those hostile to the union. In addition to legal challenges, there were familial and social obstacles. The master's family, deeply embedded in the city's elite circles, held expectations of propriety, inheritance, and social standing. A marriage to a formerly enslaved woman threatened to disrupt these expectations, potentially inciting outrage, disapproval, and even estrangement. Conversations with relatives were approached with tact, diplomacy, and careful consideration, as the master sought to balance honesty with the preservation of relationships that could not be entirely discarded. The societal environment outside the family also presented formidable challenges. Friends, neighbors, and acquaintances were attuned to deviations from expected norms, and a public acknowledgement of their relationship could provoke gossip, derision, or ostracism. The couple understood that appearances would be scrutinized, that every gesture could be interpreted, and that the public perception of their union could affect not only themselves but their extended networks. In preparing for marriage, both had to cultivate resilience, patience, and mutual understanding. Every step toward the ceremony was negotiated with care, ensuring that both emotional and practical considerations were addressed. The master, familiar with strategic planning and careful observation, applied his skills to anticipate challenges and to mitigate risks, while the woman contributed insight, intuition, and knowledge of social dynamics that could influence outcomes. The planning process became an extension of their relationship, a collaborative endeavor that reinforced trust, communication, and mutual respect. Despite the meticulous preparation, the emotional weight of the occasion was immense. The anticipation of marriage, the possibility of recognition and partnership, was tempered by fear of social backlash, legal complications, and the unpredictability of public response. Each day leading up to the ceremony was a test of courage, patience, and faith in the bond they had nurtured through months of secrecy, risk, and profound emotional intimacy. In the private sphere of their home, they rehearsed their commitment, discussing not only the practical arrangements but the expectations, hopes, and responsibilities inherent in marriage. These conversations deepened their understanding of one another, revealed hidden fears, and allowed them to cultivate strategies for navigating the broader social challenges that awaited them. The act of choosing to marry became itself a declaration of courage and autonomy, a statement that their connection could not be constrained by societal prejudice or legal restriction. On the day of the marriage, the significance of every moment was magnified by the awareness of what had been overcome. The legal formalities were observed meticulously, the witnesses present were trusted confidants, and every detail was attended to with the precision and care that had characterized their relationship from the earliest days of observation and secret communication. As the ceremony commenced, the couple experienced a profound sense of triumph, tempered by the lingering awareness that the world outside continued to be governed by suspicion, prejudice, and judgment. Their union, though legally recognized, was revolutionary in the context of New Orleans society. It challenged assumptions about race, property, and hierarchy and served as a public affirmation of equality, affection, and moral conviction. The ceremony itself was a delicate balance of intimacy and discretion, designed to honor their commitment while navigating the constraints of a society still unprepared to accept such a radical act. Friends, relatives, and associates who were present were carefully selected, individuals whose trustworthiness and discretion had been proven and whose presence lent legitimacy to the proceedings without unnecessarily exposing the couple to ridicule or hostility. Every gesture, word, and movement during the ceremony carried multiple layers of meaning. The simple exchange of vows became a profound acknowledgement of agency, autonomy, and mutual respect, a declaration that love could transcend the rigid boundaries imposed by law and custom. The act of marriage was both personal and political, a simultaneous celebration of affection and defiance. Beyond the ceremony itself, the couple confronted immediate societal reactions. Gossip, curiosity, and speculation were inevitable as news of the union spread through social and commercial networks. They were aware that scrutiny would be intense and that every interaction in public would be interpreted through the lens of expectation and prejudice. Yet the strength of their commitment, forged through months of secrecy, risk, and emotional intimacy, provided a foundation of resilience against the potential onslaught of disapproval or derision. Their marriage also introduced practical considerations that required adaptation and negotiation. Financial matters, household management, and social interactions had to be recalibrated in light of the new legal and social realities. The master, accustomed to authority and control, had to navigate the responsibilities of partnership in a manner that respected the woman's autonomy, intellect, and perspective. The woman, in turn, assumed a role that demanded both diplomacy and assertiveness, balancing her newfound freedom with the expectations and scrutiny of a society unaccustomed to acknowledging the equality of formerly enslaved individuals. Emotional intimacy deepened further in this period, as shared experiences of triumph, challenge, and public scrutiny reinforced the bond that had been nurtured in secrecy. The trials they had faced, legal, social, and personal, became a source of strength, fostering resilience, empathy, and a profound understanding of one another. Their relationship evolved from clandestine affection into a partnership characterized by mutual respect, shared responsibility, and enduring commitment. The societal significance of their marriage was not lost on them. In a city where racial and social hierarchies were rigorously enforced, the act of marrying across such a divide represented a challenge to deeply ingrained assumptions about the natural order of life, the boundaries of propriety, and the capacity for human agency. The union became a quiet statement of rebellion, an assertion of autonomy, and a testament to the enduring power of love in a world structured to deny it. Over time, their courage and steadfastness became evident to those within their immediate circles. While some continued to react with skepticism or disapproval, others recognized the integrity, commitment, and humanity that the marriage embodied. The couple's ability to maintain dignity, composure, and mutual respect in the face of societal scrutiny served as a subtle but powerful assertion of moral authority, challenging perceptions and attitudes that had long gone unexamined. In private, they reveled in the freedom and recognition that marriage conferred. Their shared life allowed for collaboration, dialogue, and mutual support, fostering an environment in which affection, understanding, and emotional growth could flourish without the constant fear that had defined their relationship in secrecy. Each day of their married life, reinforced the value of courage, perseverance, and moral conviction, illustrating the profound impact of deliberate, principled action in a society often governed by prejudice, expectation, and fear. Their story became a testament to the resilience of human connection, the capacity to challenge entrenched norms, and the extraordinary lengths to which individuals will go in pursuit of love, dignity, and freedom. The act of marriage in this context was more than a personal commitment. It was a transformative event, redefining not only their own lives, but the moral and social landscape around them. In navigating the legal, social, and emotional complexities of the occasion, the master and the woman demonstrated a remarkable combination of courage, intelligence, and empathy. highlighting the capacity for human agency to assert itself even in the most constrained circumstances. Their union served as an enduring example of how commitment, love, and moral clarity can intersect to produce acts of profound consequence, challenging the limitations imposed by law, custom, and prejudice. The marriage, carefully orchestrated, legally recognized, and socially significant, marked the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. It represented the culmination of careful planning, emotional endurance, and principled action, and it laid the groundwork for the continued pursuit of a life together defined by mutual respect, agency, and the enduring affirmation of human dignity. The courage displayed in their decision to marry and in the careful execution of the act became a defining feature of their narrative. It illuminated the extraordinary interplay of love, risk, and moral conviction, illustrating that the pursuit of authentic connection can overcome even the most formidable societal constraints. In understanding the significance of their marriage, it is essential to recognize not only the personal triumph it represented, but also the broader implications for the society in which they lived. Their union challenged prevailing notions of propriety, hierarchy, and human value, demonstrating that individual conscience and commitment can assert themselves even against deeply entrenched norms. The story of their marriage is thus both intimate and emblematic, a narrative that captures the transformative potential of love, courage, and principled action in a world often governed by fear, prejudice, and rigid expectation. Through their careful navigation of legal, social, and emotional challenges, they forged a partnership that combined affection, respect, and shared responsibility, establishing a model of commitment that transcended the constraints of their era. Their experience serves as a timeless reminder of the power of deliberate, courageous action in pursuit of justice, equality, and human dignity. By choosing to marry, they affirmed the values that had guided their relationship from its earliest days: trust, mutual respect, moral courage, and the recognition of the inherent humanity of each person. In doing so, they created a narrative that endures as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the transformative potential of love, and the extraordinary lengths to which individuals will go to assert their dignity and agency in the face of societal opposition. In the weeks and months following their marriage, the master and the woman confronted a reality that was far more complicated than the joy of legal union. New Orleans in 1838 was a city alive with commerce, culture, and social stratification. Yet it was also a place where rigid hierarchies were fiercely defended, and any deviation from societal norms could provoke intense scrutiny. Their marriage, while legally recognized, had positioned them at the center of a social storm. The reactions they encountered were as varied as they were revealing, reflecting the deeply entrenched prejudices, expectations, and fears that governed interactions within the city's elite and broader society. Friends and acquaintances reacted with a mixture of shock, curiosity, and in some cases, disapproval. For some, the union was incomprehensible, a direct affront to the conventions that had shaped their understanding of propriety, hierarchy, and morality. Whispers circulated in parlors and social gatherings, questions were asked with veiled insinuations, and glances of disbelief followed the couple wherever they went. The master, despite his wealth, influence, and reputation, found himself subject to the judgment of those who had once regarded him with respect. Letters were exchanged, conversations were had behind closed doors, and opinions were formed in the absence of full understanding. These reactions reflected not only societal prejudice against the formerly enslaved woman, but also the discomfort of witnessing a disruption of established power dynamics. Family members, too, displayed a spectrum of responses. Some were quietly supportive, recognizing the depth of affection and commitment between the two individuals, while others expressed overt disapproval, worried about reputation, inheritance, and social standing. The tension within the family created moments of strain, forcing both husband and wife to navigate interactions with diplomacy, tact, and a steadfast reliance on their shared bond. The pressure of familial scrutiny was compounded by the expectations of the broader social network. The elite circles of New Orleans were tightly knit, with reputations carefully cultivated over generations. To marry a formerly enslaved woman was to challenge not only personal expectations, but the social fabric itself. Gossip, speculation, and judgmental commentary became constant companions, and the couple had to exercise patience, discretion, and resilience in every public and private interaction. The backlash extended into commercial and civic life as well. The master's business associates, colleagues, and political acquaintances observed the union with interest and, in some cases, suspicion. Questions arose regarding propriety, ethics, and alignment with prevailing social norms. The union had implications beyond personal life, potentially influencing partnerships, contracts, and social alliances. Navigating these waters required diplomacy, strategic communication, and an unwavering commitment to moral conviction. The woman herself faced challenges that were as intense as those confronted by her husband. Having once lived under the constraints of slavery, she now faced a society that had previously defined her as property and that struggled to recognize her new status. The scrutiny, subtle judgments, and occasional outright hostility tested her resolve, her confidence, and her ability to assert her dignity in the public sphere. Yet she approached these challenges with the resilience and intelligence that had defined her throughout her life. Her presence at social gatherings, interactions with neighbors, and participation in public events required a delicate balance of visibility and discretion. Every gesture, every word, every mannerism was subject to interpretation, and she learned quickly to navigate the social landscape with awareness, poise, and confidence. Their relationship became a focal point not only of curiosity but of debate. Conversations in homes, marketplaces, and social clubs often turned to the union, reflecting broader anxieties about the shifting dynamics of race, class, and authority. Some viewed the marriage as morally suspect, others as a progressive affirmation of equality, and still others as a personal matter with little relevance to public concern. The couple's experience revealed the deep fissures in the moral and social consciousness of New Orleans, illustrating both the rigidity of prejudice and the potential for individual action to challenge established norms. Despite the intensity of public scrutiny, the couple remained committed to one another. Their marriage, forged through months of clandestine affection, legal maneuvering, and careful planning, provided a foundation of mutual support and understanding that allowed them to weather the storms of judgment and criticism. Each challenge reinforced their bond, deepened their empathy, and strengthened their resolve to live with integrity, dignity, and courage. Emotional resilience became essential. The couple had to maintain their commitment in the face of societal pressure, personal attacks, and occasional isolation. They drew strength from their shared experiences, from the knowledge of the obstacles they had overcome, and from the awareness that their union represented a triumph of conscience and love over convention and fear. The reactions of neighbors and community members were often subtle but revealing. Some attempted to marginalize the couple socially, excluding them from gatherings or events, while others observed from a distance with a mixture of fascination and moral judgment. The couple learned to interpret these behaves. IORs to navigate the unspoken codes of acceptance and rejection and to assert their presence with dignity and confidence. The backlash also manifested in attempts to undermine the legal status of their union. Questions arose regarding the validity of documents, the legitimacy of witnesses, and the procedural correctness of the emancipation and marriage filings. These challenges required careful attention to legal detail, consultation with advisors, and a readiness to defend the legitimacy of their relationship through reasoned argument and meticulous documentation. The master's knowledge of law and procedure became a critical asset, allowing him to navigate potential challenges and protect the rights and dignity of his wife. Financial and social pressures compounded the challenges they faced. The master had to manage concerns about inheritance, property rights, and the potential impact of social censure on business dealings. He carefully balanced his personal convictions with the practical realities of maintaining social and economic grudging respect, illustrating the capacity of principled action to influence perception and challenge entrenched biases. The broader implications of the backlash were profound. The union of a former master and a formerly enslaved woman challenged assumptions about hierarchy, propriety, and human value, forcing individuals and communities to confront the moral dimensions of social norms. Their experience illuminated the tension between legal rights, social convention, and ethical conscience, demonstrating that personal action could catalyze reflection, debate, and eventually change. In private, the couple cultivated a sanctuary of trust, affection, and mutual support that insulated them from the full brunt of societal scrutiny. Their home became a space where love, conversation, and planning could flourish, reinforcing the emotional foundation necessary to withstand external pressures. These private moments of connection allowed for reflection, emotional replenishment, and the continued nurturing of a shared vision for the future. The consequences of their actions extended beyond their immediate lives. Their courage, visibility, and steadfast commitment to one another became an implicit challenge to the moral and social order, inspiring reflection among peers, neighbors, and even those initially hostile to the Union. While not all observers were convinced or accepting, the very existence of the marriage planted seeds of doubt, awareness, and reconsideration regarding assumptions about race, hierarchy, and human dignity. The couple's experience also revealed the intersection of personal courage and public accountability. Their decisions, while deeply intimate, had social ramifications that required strategic navigation. They demonstrated the capacity to assert autonomy and moral clarity while remaining attentive to the responsibilities and consequences inherent in their public presence. Each act of composure, each engagement with critics, and each demonstration of mutual respect and dignity served as a subtle reinforcement of the principles upon which their union had been founded. As time passed, the intensity of immediate backlash began to moderate, though challenges and scrutiny remained. The couple's consistent conduct, emotional resilience, and unwavering commitment provided a model for navigating adversity, illustrating that integrity, patience, and strategic action could sustain even the most socially precarious relationships. Their lives became an ongoing negotiation between personal fulfillment and social reality, between private happiness and public perception. In facing consequences and backlash, the couple exemplified the qualities that had defined their relationship from its earliest days: courage, discretion, intelligence, empathy, and moral clarity. The external pressures they endured did not diminish their bond. Rather, these challenges reinforced their understanding of one another, deepened their emotional intimacy and strength. Then their commitment to a shared life guided by principle, affection, and mutual respect. Their story of navigating consequences and backlash offers enduring lessons about resilience, agency, and the transformative potential of love and moral conviction. It underscores the ability of individuals to challenge societal norms, confront prejudice, and assert dignity and equality, even in environments that are hostile, constrained, and unforgiving. The trials they faced in the aftermath of emancipation in marriage were not merely personal. They were emblematic of broader social tensions and moral questions, reflecting the intersection of human desire, social expectation, and ethical action. Ultimately, the master and the woman emerged from this period not only as a legally recognized couple, but as exemplars of courage, integrity, and the enduring power of human connection. Their ability to withstand societal scrutiny, familial disapproval, and communal gossip was a testament to the strength of their bond and the depth of their commitment. In navigating consequences and backlash, they demonstrated that love, moral clarity, and strategic action can prevail even amidst formidable social obstacles, leaving a legacy of resilience, courage, and ethical conviction that resonates far beyond the confines of their own experience. After navigating the trials of emancipation, marriage, and societal backlash, the master and the woman embarked on a phase of life that was defined by both the ordinariness and extraordinary significance of shared domesticity. In New Orleans of 1838, the day-to-day realities of life could not be suspended, even for those whose love had triumphed over legal, social, and moral obstacles. Yet within these routines lay the subtle triumphs of agency, mutual respect, and the cultivation of a household that reflected both affection and intentionality. Their life together was a careful balance of private intimacy and public visibility, shaped by the knowledge that every action could be scrutinized, misinterpreted, or even challenged by those still reluctant to acknowledge the legitimacy of their union. In the early mornings, the couple would awaken to the rhythm of the city, the tolling of church bells, the distant sounds of riverboats, and the subtle stirrings of a household that now operated under their joint direction. The woman, having once been relegated to the position of a servant, now took her place as an equal partner, actively participating in decisions regarding the management of the estate, finances, and social interactions. Her intelligence, foresight, and calm decisiveness contributed to a household that was orderly, secure, and reflective of shared values. The master, accustomed to authority and responsibility, found his role shifting in subtle but profound ways. He had long exercised control over both property and people, Yet in this partnership, he learned the nuances of shared decision-making, the value of counsel, and the profound satisfaction of collaboration grounded in respect. The dynamics of their relationship evolved naturally, blending the lessons of the past with the possibilities of freedom and equality. They cultivated routines that reinforced intimacy, trust, and mutual appreciation. Meals were shared not merely as sustenance, but as moments of conversation, reflection, and planning. Evenings were reserved for discussion, reading, and reflection, as the couple explored ideas, debated philosophies, and considered the broader social implications of their unique position. In these private spaces, they nurtured a culture of intellectual curiosity, emotional honesty, and shared responsibility. The household itself became a reflection of their values. Staff, when employed, were treated with respect and fairness, a stark contrast to the rigid hierarchies that had previously defined the estate. Decisions regarding discipline, task assignments, and domestic management were approached with empathy and consideration, creating an environment in which cooperation and loyalty were cultivated rather than enforced through fear. The couple's example of partnership extended to their social interactions. They carefully navigated relationships with neighbors, relatives, and acquaintances, balancing visibility with discretion. The master, whose social network had been conditioned to expectations of propriety and hierarchy, learned to negotiate these connections with tact, highlighting the integrity, character, and dignity of his wife while maintaining his own standing. The woman, for her part, demonstrated grace, intelligence, and poise, reinforcing her position as a respected and autonomous individual within the household and community. Their life together was not without its challenges. The residual effects of societal prejudice, lingering gossip, and subtle hostility required ongoing vigilance. Encounters in public spaces demanded composure, awareness, and the ability to deflect judgment without confrontation. Each interaction became an exercise in diplomacy, a careful calibration of presence, tone, and behavior. In facing these challenges, the couple reinforced one another's confidence, offering reassurance, strategy, and emotional support. Beyond the domestic and social spheres, they engaged in broader community matters with intentionality. They observed the injustices around them, noting the continued subjugation of enslaved individuals and the inequities that pervaded social, economic, and legal systems. While the constraints of their position required discretion, they found avenues to contribute positively, whether through mentorship, assistance to the newly freed, or discreet acts of support for those marginalized by society. Their shared life became a conduit not only for personal fulfillment, but for principled engagement with the world around them. Emotional intimacy deepened over time. Having endured secrecy, risk, and societal backlash, the couple developed a profound understanding of one another's inner life, temperament, and moral compass. They learned to anticipate reactions, respect boundaries, and nurture each other's aspirations. The trust cultivated through clandestine encounters and legal challenges now expanded into daily life, enabling candid conversation, shared decision-making, and the unencumbered expression of love, gratitude, and concern. This emotional foundation became the cornerstone of resilience, allowing them to navigate both routine and extraordinary challenges with cohesion and mutual support. Their legacy began to take shape not merely in the legal and social sense, but in the moral and symbolic realms. By forging a life together that balanced affection, respect, and principled action, they created a model of partnership that contrasted sharply with the prevailing norms of New Orleans society. The narrative of their union, emancipation, marriage, and continued resilience served as a quiet but enduring testament to the power of conscience, courage, and love to transcend societal limitations. Practical aspects of life together demanded careful coordination. Household finances, property management, and social engagements required organization, foresight, and cooperation. The master's experience in business and law complemented the woman's insight, intuition, and strategic sensibility, creating a functional and harmonious domestic unit. Decisions regarding investments, household improvements, and the management of staff were approached collaboratively, blending pragmatism with principle. Their home became a space of both refuge and influence, reflecting the values they cultivated: dignity, respect, autonomy, and moral responsibility. Education, intellectual pursuit, and cultural engagement were prioritized within their household. Reading, discussion, and the cultivation of ideas were integrated into daily life, reflecting their shared commitment to personal growth, understanding, and the exploration of broader social, ethical, and philosophical questions. These pursuits reinforced their partnership, enriched their perspectives, and provided a foundation for engagement with the world beyond their domestic sphere. Their story also carried generational implications. The presence of a marriage founded upon equality, mutual respect, and resilience offered a model for children, relatives, and the broader community. The lessons embedded in their choices, conduct, and perseverance became living examples of the potential for principled action, moral courage, and human dignity to assert themselves even in restrictive social environments. The challenges they faced, prejudice, gossip, scrutiny, continued to shape their approach to life. Each decision, whether social, financial, or domestic, was considered in light of the potential consequences and the broader narrative their lives represented. The couple's resilience became both practical and symbolic, demonstrating that the cultivation of intake, discretion, and compassion could sustain a life of fulfillment amidst societal obstacles. Emotional, intellectual, and practical cooperation were continuously reinforced. Disagreements, inevitable in any partnership, were approached with dialogue, reflection, and compromise. The capacity to balance personal preference with shared goals, individual expression with collective responsibility, and private desire with public perception became a defining feature of their married life. Over time, their household became known for its stability, dignity, and subtle influence. Friends, acquaintances, and community members observed their conduct with a mixture of curiosity, admiration, and, in some cases, reluctant respect. Their consistent demonstration of partnership, principle, and poise contributed to a gradual reshaping of perceptions, illustrating the capacity for personal example to influence societal attitudes, even in the face of deeply ingrained prejudice. The couple's life together also encompassed personal joy, reflection, and celebration, moments of domesticity, shared meals, conversations, walks through the city, engagement with the arts, and quiet evenings of reflection provided a counterbalance to the intensity of public scrutiny. These occasions reinforced their bond, nurtured emotional intimacy, and cultivated a sense of normalcy and fulfillment within a life that was anything but ordinary. Their legacy, though grounded in personal experience, extended into the broader social and moral realm. By living a life defined by integrity, courage, and mutual respect, they created a narrative that challenged assumptions about hierarchy, propriety, and human value. The story of their union became an enduring example of the possibility for love, principle, and resilience to prevail even in restrictive, judgmental, and morally complex environments. The couple also engaged in acts of mentorship, guidance, and support for others navigating the complex realities of freedom, social transition, and moral ambiguity. Their experience became a source of insight, encouragement, and practical wisdom for those confronting the residual effects of slavery, prejudice, and social expectation. Through these actions, their personal narrative intertwined with broader social influence, reinforcing the interconnectedness of private virtue and public consequence. Emotional growth remains central to their life together. Having endured secrecy, legal maneuvering, and societal backlash, they developed a profound capacity for empathy, understanding, and the cultivation of mutual support. The ability to anticipate each other's needs, respect boundaries, and sustain emotional resilience became an enduring hallmark of their relationship, providing both stability and fulfillment amidst external pressures. Practical achievements, including the management of property, social influence, and household operations, reflected the synthesis of skill, insight, and principle. The Mayor's experience in law, commerce, and strategic planning complemented the woman's intelligence, resourcefulness, and social acumen, creating a collaborative environment in which decisions were informed, principled, and mutually endorsed. Their life together became a template for the integration of moral courage, practical acumen, and emotional intelligence, demonstrating that success, dignity, and fulfillment could be pursued simultaneously within a challenging social context. Over time, the couple's shared history, the clandestine courtship, the emancipation, the socially challenging marriage, solidified into a narrative that carried both personal significance and broader symbolic weight. They were recognized in varying degrees as exemplars of courage, principle, and resilience, their story illustrating the capacity for human agency, moral clarity, and persistent love to assert itself in environments structured by constraint, prejudice, and expectation. In reflecting upon their life together, the enduring themes of autonomy, respect, courage, and partnership became evident. Their choices, actions, and conduct not only shaped their personal happiness, but also contributed to a subtle transformation of perceptions within their community, demonstrating the potential for principled living to influence social consciousness over time. The couple's legacy was not defined solely by public recognition, but by the profound impact of their partnership upon one another, their household, and the broader moral imagination of those who encountered their story. By cultivating a life marked by dignity, mutual respect, and principled action, they provided a living example of the possibilities inherent in human connection, the pursuit of justice, and the assertion of equality and autonomy. Their story endures as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the power of love to transcend constraint, and the profound consequences of moral courage exercised in the face of adversity. Through the ordinary and extraordinary moments of daily life, they demonstrated that legacy is crafted not only in dramatic acts, but in sustained commitment, shared responsibility, and the consistent cultivation of integrity, empathy, and emotional intimacy. In this way, the master and the woman built a life together that was both personally fulfilling and socially significant, embodying principles that resonate far beyond the specific context of 1838 New Orleans. Their life together, marked by mutual respect, enduring affection, and courageous principle, became an enduring symbol of the possibilities inherent in human connection, moral clarity, and the unyielding pursuit of freedom and dignity, leaving a legacy that continues to inspire, challenge, and illuminate the moral imagination of subsequent generations in reflecting upon the extraordinary narrative of a master and a formerly enslaved woman whose bond endured emancipation, marriage, and societal scrutiny. One is compelled to consider the profound questions of justice, morality, and human dignity that permeate their story. The events that unfolded in New Orleans in 1838 were not simply personal milestones. They were emblematic of a society in which law, custom, and morality often existed in tension, a society in which human relationships were governed by both codified rules and deeply entrenched social hierarchies. The decision to emancipate, marry, and build a life together was therefore far more than a personal choice. It represented an exercise of moral courage, ethical reflection, and principled action that challenged prevailing assumptions about human worth, equality, and responsibility. Central to this reflection is the notion of justice, both in its legal and ethical dimensions. Legally, emancipation required adherence to statutes, procedural safeguards, and documentation, yet the law itself was insufficient as a guarantor of true justice. The woman's freedom, though recognized in courts and bureaucratic records, could not by itself ensure respect, equality, or moral recognition in a society that had long equated human worth with property, race, and social status. True justice, as revealed in their story, was inseparable from conscience, courage, and the willingness to act in accordance with principles of fairness and human dignity. The master's choice to pursue emancipation and marriage was a deliberate confrontation with the limitations of the legal system, a recognition that morality could not be delegated solely to statutes, and that ethical responsibility required the active assertion of human agency. In taking these steps, he exercised a form of justice that transcended codified law, affirming the intrinsic value and autonomy of another human being, and demonstrating that ethical action often requires personal risk, foresight, and unwavering commitment. The narrative also highlights the complexity of morality in a society structured by inequality. Social norms, gossip, and entrenched prejudices exerted pressures that could easily distort moral judgment. To act ethically in such an environment demanded discernment, courage, and a willingness to prioritize conscience over convenience, fear, or self-interest. The master's awareness of societal constraints did not diminish his moral responsibility. Rather, it heightened the stakes of ethical decision-making, requiring careful reflection, meticulous planning, and steadfast adherence to principle. The woman's experience further illuminates the moral dimensions of their story. Her journey from bondage to freedom and from subjugation to equal partnership underscores the ethical imperative of recognizing and affirming the autonomy of individuals who have been historically marginalized. Her dignity, intelligence, and resilience were not mere personal qualities, but moral claims demanding recognition, respect, and protection. The couple's joint navigation of social, legal, and ethical challenges exemplifies the interplay of individual conscience, collective norms, and the responsibilities inherent in human relationships. Their story compels reflection on the limits of social convention when it conflicts with fundamental principles of justice. The disapproval, gossip, and scrutiny they endured were not merely incidental social phenomena, but ethical tests, challenging their commitment to moral integrity and mutual respect. In choosing to persist, to act with courage and dignity despite societal resistance, they demonstrated that morality is active, relational, and often requires the courage to defy expectation, challenge prejudice, and assert the inherent worth of others. The enduring significance of their actions lies not only in the personal consequences of freedom and marital union, but also in the broader moral example they set. By exercising ethical discernment, courage, and steadfastness, they revealed that justice is inseparable from human action, and that moral responsibility extends beyond passive adherence to law, encompassing active engagement, principled defiance of injustice, and the cultivation of respect, equality, and dignity in human relationships. The reflections on morality extend to considerations of love, commitment, and partnership. Their bond, formed in secrecy and tested through legal and social obstacles, exemplifies the ethical dimension of relational fidelity, empathy, and mutual support. Love, in this context, is not merely an emotional phenomenon, but an ethical commitment, a choice to honor, respect, and uphold the dignity of another human being despite external pressures, risk, and opposition. The integration of love and morality underscores the inseparability of effective and ethical life. The exercise of virtue is realized not only in abstract principle, but in the cultivation of relationships characterized by respect, empathy, and integrity. Their story also invites contemplation of the societal structures that enable or inhibit justice and morality. The legal and social frameworks of New Orleans, deeply embedded with hierarchies, prejudice, and restriction, highlight the systemic obstacles that confront ethical actors. By navigating these structures with prudence, courage, and conscientious action, the couple exemplifies the moral work required to realize justice within imperfect systems. Their experience demonstrates that ethical agency is exercised not in isolation, but in relation to structures, norms, and historical contexts, revealing the interplay of individual choice, social constraint, and moral responsibility. In addition, their narrative underscores the importance of resilience and strategic action in the pursuit of justice. The challenges of emancipation, marriage, and social scrutiny required not only moral clarity, but practical wisdom, foresight, and the capacity to anticipate and respond to potential obstacles. Ethical action, in this view, is inseparable from competence, planning, and the cultivation of resource. CES, emotional, social, and legal, that enable principled choices to be realized in practice. The reflections extend to questions of legacy, influence, and the moral imagination. By constructing a life together marked by dignity, mutual respect, and principled conduct, the couple established a narrative that reverberated beyond their immediate circumstances. Their choices challenged assumptions about hierarchy, race, and social propriety, inviting observers to reconsider the moral and social dimensions of human relationships. Their lived example illustrates the potential for individual and relational ethics to shape social perception, challenge prejudice, and inspire reflection on the principles of justice and morality. The story further illuminates the intersection of personal and collective responsibility. The master's actions, though grounded in personal affection, had broader implications for those around him, influencing perceptions, social norms, and the moral consciousness of his community. Similarly, the woman's conduct, resilience, and engagement with the social world contributed to the redefinition of expectation, respect, and equality. Together, their lives demonstrate the relational nature of morality, in which ethical choices resonate beyond the immediate actors, shaping broader social and cultural landscapes. Their reflections on justice also encompass the recognition of human dignity as an ethical imperative. The emancipation, marriage, and shared life of the couple underscore the principle that every individual possesses intrinsic value, autonomy, and moral claim upon others' respect. This recognition of dignity is not merely abstract, but realized in concrete action. The assertion of freedom, the choice to marry, the cultivation of a life together, and the daily enactment of respect, care, and mutual support. Moral responsibility in this framework is inseparable from the recognition of humanity in others and the active defense of that recognition against prejudice, constraint, and societal inertia. In contemplating their story, one is also struck by the ethical significance of courage and perseverance. Acting rightly in the face of legal ambiguity, social disapproval, and potential personal loss demanded a sustained commitment to principle. The couple's capacity to endure scrutiny, navigate obstacles, and maintain dignity reflects the profound role of moral courage in the pursuit of justice. Their example illuminates the ethical lesson that virtue is often realized not in ease but in struggle, and that the path to moral fulfillment requires both awareness and action. Moreover, the narrative highlights the role of ethical reflection in guiding action. The master's contemplation of the consequences of emancipation, marriage, and public scrutiny illustrates the interplay of reason, conscience, and foresight in moral decision-making. Ethical action is not impulsive but considered, informed by awareness of context, potential outcomes, and the needs and rights of others. The woman's response, shaped by both lived experience and careful judgment, exemplifies the integration of insight, prudence, and moral discernment, reinforcing the relational dimension of ethical reflection and the collaborative nature of principled action. Their story also provokes reflection on the limitations and possibilities of law as a vehicle for justice. Legal recognition, while essential, is insufficient to guarantee the moral dimensions of freedom, respect, and dignity. True justice requires the active exercise of conscience, ethical judgment, and principled action in contexts that may not fully support or recognize these values. The narrative demonstrates that law, morality, and social practice are intertwined, but not identical, and that ethical responsibility extends beyond compliance to include the cultivation of relationships, recognition of human worth, and courage to act rightly. In sum, the reflections on justice and morality arising from their story encompass multiple dimensions: the affirmation of human dignity, the necessity of courage and perseverance, the integration of love and ethical responsibility, the relational and social dimensions of moral action, and the critical role of foresight and strategic planning in realizing principled outcomes. Their experiences illustrate that ethical life is both personal and collective, both practical and aspirational, and that the pursuit of justice requires continual engagement with law, society, and conscience. Ultimately, the narrative of their emancipation, marriage, and life together is a profound meditation on the possibilities and demands of moral action. It challenges readers and observers to consider the ways in which social norms, prejudice, and legal structures constrain ethical behavior, and how individual courage, reflection, and relational integrity can confront and transform these constraints. The couple's choices reveal that justice is enacted not merely in principle, but through persistent, careful, and morally courageous action, and that love, respect, and human dignity are inseparable from the ethical exercise of freedom and agency. Their story resonates across time as a testament to the enduring power of conscience, the moral imperative to recognize and affirm human worth, and the transformative potential of principled, courageous action in shaping both personal destiny and broader social understanding. In reflecting on their experiences, one is reminded that the pursuit of justice and morality is neither easy nor guaranteed, yet it remains an essential endeavor. The legacy of their life together, grounded in courage, affection, and ethical integrity, provides a model for considering the responsibilities we bear to one another, the ways in which personal choices intersect with societal structures, and the enduring significance of acting in accordance with conscience and principle. Their story invites us to ponder the depths of huma and agency, the challenges of ethical life in imperfect societies, and the extraordinary potential of love, courage, and moral clarity to assert justice, affirm dignity, and leave a lasting imprint upon the moral imagination of those who witness it.